All right, so our report is about uh, energy sources alternative to the energy sources that are majority in use right now, and the pros and cons of these alternative energy sources. And so, our goal with this project is to benefit the community in any way that we can. Whether that be carbon footprint, cost, the aesthetically pleasing factor of the energy production, whatever it may be. We just want to benefit the community with these alternative energy sources. Um, we would also like to persuade the audience to accept and implement these alternative energy sources that we find beneficial to the community. So we have 16 members. Kesem, Jason, that's myself, Evan, Maheen, Corey, and Mallory. So we will be presenting in that order, and Kesem will start us off with wind energy and essentially just go over, the pros, the cons of it, and whether or not, it's a good alternative energy source or should we look into something else. I'll be doing the same thing with solar power, just the good and the bad. And then Evan is going to be doing the exact same thing with hydropower. Maheen is then going to go on to fossil fuels, which is one of our major sources of energy being used today. And then that'll kind of give the audience a chance to compare these alternative energy sources that we are proposing and see, is it something that's feasible. And then we're going to go on to Corey. Corey is going to talk about nuclear power and how it's potentially detrimental, and yet it could create large benefits. It's the same sort of thing as the past four, just the pros and the cons essentially. And then to end it up, Mallory is going to kind of conclude the report, just going hitting the main points, summarizing what we've gone over previously. So our goal with this report is to find an energy source that benefits the community. We want to lower the carbon emissions. We want to lower costs. We want to make these power sources aesthetically pleasing and just overall find an energy source that is beneficial to the community and better than what we currently have. And the reason for that is because what we currently have, it creates a lot of problems. These coal, fossil fuel, petroleum power plants just they create a lot of carbon emissions, which is just not good for the earth. It's not sustainable. It's not good. They cost a lot, and they're not aesthetically pleasing either. They create large amounts of smog, and I don't know who really wants to look at that. So we're gonna try and find something that's can really just better the community. So with that, we're gonna go on to Kesem, and he's gonna talk about wind power.
All right. Hi, guys. My name is Kesson, and I am doing well on the progress so far. I am doing wind energy, seeing how wind power works and what are the advantages and ways where we can save the burning of fossil fuels. So I think I am on a good track so far. I'm not going to go into very much detail as I will in the bigger project, but for right now, I'm just going to introduce some basic things that I have found. So, there's it's a unlimited free renewable resource, which wind power, it's always unlimited because wind never goes away. And also, it's a clean fuel source. Like, there is no burning fossil fuels. It's all through kinetic energy and the wind. So, how that works is the wind turbine spins, and it goes through the control system to the power interface, and then which creates power. So many people usually use them. They can both be used in industrial and domestic places. So they can usually power on anything. And the good thing about them is their low operational costs. So I have found research about like low operational costs and all the things that I listed, but I will explain that later on in the big project. But also a good thing about wind energy that I have researched is the job creations. Wind energy is going to create more jobs by controlling the turbines. And so that should be it for now.
Okay, so I'm gonna go over solar energy, and solar energy overall is pretty beneficial. As you can see at this table at the bottom, it has a pretty negligible carbon emission while it's generating electricity. Now, you do have to consider the production emissions that these solar panels do produce. But even if you consider those, so considering the production emissions, um, after 3 years, solar power is considered carbon neutral. And so if you spread out the emissions from the production over those first 3 years, that's costs about 50 grams of carbon dioxide per kilowatt hour in comparison to natural gas, which is about 454 grams of carbon dioxide per kilowatt hour, and coal, which is about 1,021 grams of carbon dioxide per kilowatt hour. And these natural gas and coal power plants produce this all the time, not just for the first 3 years. Solar power is also more cost effective. As you can see in this chart on the right side, the cost of production of solar modules is decreasing, and the cost of generating electricity through solar panels is lower than like natural gas and coal. Solar panels cost about $24 per megawatt hour, whereas coal is almost double at $44 per megawatt hour, and natural gas is about $66 per megawatt hour. So, it's more cost effective. And then lastly, solar power is just more sustainable than like natural gas and coal, fossil fuels, I guess. And because you're not taking the energy from a limited supply, you're taking it from something that we are already getting and not using, and that being the energy from the sun. We just it's not going to run out in the way that natural gas and coal would. So with that, we're going to go on to Evan, who's going to talk about hydropower.
Thank you, Jason, for your presentation on solar energy. Today, I want to discuss hydroelectric power and the use of, first thing I want to discuss is the increased use of hydropower around the world. In the top right graph, you can see it discusses countries around the world over the past 50 years and their use of hydropower. I wanted to show this to show that it dramatically increases the amount of hydropower used over the past 50 years. It more than doubles. And I wanted to specifically show this to show that the U.S. is not the only country that's using more and more hydropower every year. There's countries around the world that continue to use it, and I believe these countries over even the next 50 years will continue to use more and more hydroelectric power. The second thing I want to discuss is the ability to mass produce hydroelectric power. There's a dam in Washington called the Grand Coulee Dam, and that single dam can produce enough power for 21 million homes in the U.S. And that's roughly 16% of all of the homes in the U.S. So I think that's a great way to mass produce power, and I think it could be used more and more over the next decade or so. And I believe we will start to see that. The last thing I want to discuss is the large upfront cost of a hydroelectric dam. So if someone wants to build a hydroelectric dam, it's a very large upfront cost, but it's a really good long-term return on investment. Most of the money is upfront on the construction costs and the labor costs of building the dam, and then it over the next decade plus it pays for itself and more, of course. So it's a very good long-term investment, and like I said before, it mass produces and it can give electricity and power to a very large amount of people and a large amount of resources. Next, I will hand it off to Maheen.
Thank you. Fossil fuels still remain as one of the most widely used energy sources throughout the world. When looking at the bottom left image, you can see the United States energy consumption from 1776 to 2015. Petroleum, natural gas, and coal, all three being fossil fuels, still remain as the top three energy sources used in the United States. While it is declining a bit for like coal and petroleum, compared to the other energy sources such as nuclear and hydroelectric, it still remains far at the top. Because of its high usage, it also generates the most emissions as well, dangerous emissions as well. When looking at coal, it emits 2.1 million parts or pounds per million of carbon dioxide into the air and 350,000 pounds per million into the air as well. Natural gas does 900 million, which is less when compared to coal and biomass, but has way more methane at 540,000 pounds per million. Because of its high usage and its limited resources, fossil fuels will never be sustainable. Most of my research on fossil fuels is complete. Only things I should look further into is to the community perception of fossil fuels, on how people think about it, and why they may be reluctant to change into more modern and sustainable energy sources. I also want to look at why the rich and companies are reluctant to change, and if there's anything they're waiting for, or if it's not an opportune time yet to change into more sustainable energy sources. I'm going to pass it on to Corey, who's going to talk more about nuclear energy.
Thank you, Maheen. So for my research on nuclear power, I'll be discussing three major points, which are its efficiency, its production, and its current uses. To start with, nuclear power is reported to operate at 93% average capacity factor, which for reference means it produces 93% of the potential amount of electricity it could produce out of 100%. And as you can see in the picture below, this is also far higher than other sources of energy that are currently being used. In addition to this, nuclear power plants run 24 hours, 7 days a week, which means they run nonstop and are always producing electricity, which shows how efficient nuclear power currently is. Next, we have the production of nuclear power, which comes from nuclear fission. And nuclear fission is the process in which atoms split, which releases energy and heats the water, and in turn creates steam, which turns the turbine blades within the nuclear reactor and makes this energy. The diagram below shows a visual of how this energy is produced through nuclear fission. And lastly, I researched the more uses of nuclear power to see how it is incorporated in our everyday lives. And it's used in a wide range of ways, from X-rays and radiation treatment in medicine, to powering submarines and increasing their propulsion capabilities, to being in smoke detectors that contain elements from nuclear reactors that go off when smoke enters them. So all in all, there are many uses of nuclear power, and it continues to grow as time goes on. Now I'll pass it off to Mallory, who will be doing an analysis of the different energy sources discussed in our presentation.
Hi everyone. So the progress I have made in this project is I have begun my research in the efficiency of each energy source. and also the ideal condition that each source exists in. The only research I have left would be the pros and cons of each energy source. So I am definitely on schedule to be finishing my project, my part in the project before the final due date. What I have found so far in the efficiency of the sources, and I'm measuring efficiency by the cost of production, the cost of fuel, or whatever it takes to run the source, and then finally the cost of maintaining each source. I have found that the most efficient source is wind energy, and following wind energy would be hydroelectric, then nuclear, and finally solar energy. And then finally, of course, the least efficient we would consider is burning fossil fuels because we are trying to find the alternative to that. And for the most ideal condition for each of these sources, wind energy is obviously going to be most ideal in a windy climate and also in a large and open field. The most ideal condition for hydroelectric energy is a body of water with a fast flowing, that is fast flowing. For nuclear energy, it would be a climate that is not prone to earthquakes and also is not heavily populated for the rare occurrence that the nuclear waste has leaked, and it's not harmful to the people. And finally, the most ideal condition for solar energy is obviously a very sunny climate. In conclusion, my team and I are in very good standing with our progress. We are definitely on schedule to completing our project by the final due date. We all have begun our research, and really all we have left is to complete it. And you have heard Maheen is researching fossil fuels, Corey is researching nuclear energy, Kassem is researching wind energy, Jason is researching solar energy, Evan is researching hydroelectric, and I am analyzing these sources. And just a reminder, our project is extremely important for the interest of the whole world. And that is, right now, we are resulting to burning fossil fuels. As we know, that is harmful to our environment, but it's also not a renewable source. So it's not guaranteed forever. So conducting this research, we are finding a source that is more ideal in a sense that it is renewable and it can be guaranteed for the future, and it's also not harming our planet. So if anybody has any questions, concerns, or comments they would like to share with us, feel free to reach out to myself or any of my teammates through email, and have a great day. Thank you.